Hello, and welcome to another episode of Thoroughly Thriving, where we're putting human back in human capital solutions. On today's episode, we're going to hear from an industry leader, where they're sharing their thoughts, feedback, and perspective on what's happening in today's world of work. Well, let's stay tuned and perk our ears up for another exciting episode.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Thoroughly Thriving. We're so glad to have you today. We're really excited to have a bit of a unique format from what we normally do here on Thoroughly Thriving. And we're going to have two guests in a great interview format to talk about some of the realities of life, talk about some of the realities of, finding more rhythm and balance to a very busy schedule, from, working together and supporting those in your world professionally and personally, and talk a little bit about community and legacy as well. So it's going to be a really exciting podcast today. But with that, if you've listened to any of our other episodes, you'll know that we typically like to introduce our guests here on Thoroughly Thriving. But you know what? We're going to change it up a little bit because I have one of the most incredible couples on the podcast today, and I'd love to let them introduce themselves and give you a little window into who they are before we get into some really exciting topical conversations. So, Darren, with that, will you mind taking it away?
Yes. Well, hi, Thoroughly Thriving fans and committed listeners. It is good to be on, albeit from a guest perspective. So for those that know me, my name is Darren Thevathasan, co-founder of the Thorough Group, and I've been in human capital solutions for 20 plus years. Have worked for some of the most amazing companies in the recruitment human capital solution space. And 10 months ago, we launched the Thorough Group with my trusted partner, Sean Burrows, where we're passionate about servicing, partnering, supporting the life science industry. And I couldn't be more excited to have a somewhat of a familiar face in my wife and my bride, Jeena Thevathasan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Sean and Darren. I've been wondering why I haven't been invited yet to the podcast. It was about time. But as Darren said, I'm his wife, Jeena Thevathasan, and I am on today because I work in the life sciences industry. So I have been in clinical operations across different companies and institutions for the past 20 plus years. I started out in New York City at 3 different hospitals over the course of 8 years. Started out in pediatric oncology as a study coordinator, moved my way up to managing a clinical trials office with over 70 clinical trials. From there, I moved on to big pharma and was there for several years before we met and got married and moved to the West Coast. And there's when I started in my first biotech. And here I've been in 3 different biotechs because it's so volatile and fun. And then have joined back with big pharma again. And I've loved my career. I often say I'm finding a cure for cancer. So I'm passionate every day coming, knowing that it's helping somebody out there.
Amazing. And Jeena, thank you for the work that you do. Sometimes we like to think of the work that we do as important, and then I remember what you do every day, and I take a step back and get focused on the real important things. So, well, as we dive into our conversation today, I want to talk about something really important that I think a lot of us take some time to consider, but really have some challenge with, and that's how do we find balance, or I really like the word rhythm a little bit better, to the totalities of life. As two working parents who have demanding jobs, and how do you both intentionally find a rhythm that helps to balance parenting and marriage, career growth, and to have some community involvement as well? Do you have any practical strategies that work for you as a family?
Well, John, you are spot on, because I think the most appropriate word is rhythm. I often found that a balance exudes a zero-sum game. If I'm giving 80% to my family, then perhaps it's only 20% to the business, or whatever ratio you want to insert there. So what we found is there's been different rhythms in our lives since we've been married, to where we're going to be busier on the family front. It's going to be a heavy load on the professional front, or perhaps, there's a lot of things that we need to take care of in our community that are very, very important. So intentionality is huge. Communication certainly is the bedrock of any important relationship. So we found having open lines of communication when we're entering those weeks, months, seasons where we know there's going to be a heavy load with family, business, community, and being very transparent and vulnerable about what's going on in each other's lives, because it creates awareness. What do you think?
Yeah, and I agree. We have to be very intentional with our busy lives. Um, we're very intentional about our marriage first, so making sure we make time for each other in different ways, and then we also are very intentional with our children. We don't want to forget time with them or being spending time with them intentionally. So we have set game nights and dinner nights out, and make sure we go to all their games. They actually remember, you missed that one time of my, memory time at school, because we're there all the time. So they remember the one time that we missed, which is great. But we also, something practical, because you asked about a practical tip, is a book that we've read called Buy Back Your Time. And it really helps you to outline what are the things that bring you energy and joy, and what are the things that you can delegate and, give those to somebody else and pay something towards that, because you want to intentionally spend time in those things that bring you joy and energy and wealth. So we're very, we follow that book, and it's made a big difference in our lives.
Wow, that's great insight, and I love how you said you put your marriage first. I think so often it's easy as very fully. I'll use the term fully scheduled people. I don't like busy. Busy makes me feel like I'm out of control and all over the place. But fully
I like
scheduled
that.
people, that it's really difficult to do everything that you want to do well if your foundation isn't solid. And I know for so many of us, that's one of the things that if we're not careful, can make things really difficult. Speaking of marriage, being married to someone in the same industry, but on different sides of the fence. Gina, you work in clinical research and clinical development, leading toward running trials that can help to cure cancer. And then Darren, you work in more of a talent solutions, or whatever you want to call it, staffing, resource, and recruitment type of a space, but it's in the same industry but on opposite sides. How do you guys leverage each other's perspectives to be more effective at what you do? And do you guys ever find that you have any industry discussions at home, maybe around the dinner table or even in the car driving to and from places, that help to spark new ideas or synergies for your careers?
Yeah. Sean, it's interesting. When I met Gina and she told me on our first date what she did, um, wow, I was elated because, excuse us, we've been in the industry at that point for a bit. And so I understood what she did conceptually, but couldn't do it practically. And so that has continued throughout our relationship and certainly into our marriage. It's been neat to bounce ideas off of Gina because I can have a very myopic lens where I have tunnel vision and I'm not always taking into consideration how we're best servicing our clients and candidates out there. And sometimes I need to really check myself and have a conversation with Gina and say, am I looking at this the right way? Am I approaching this important situation in this person's career or providing the best solutions to our clients? How would you really kind of work through this? What are some of the responses you would have? And I found those to be a common discussion around the dinner table. And even from the perspective when we have other competitors reach out to my wife to try to recruit her, it's such an interesting dynamic because she is open to telling us, what's working and what's not. And, certainly some best practices for making sure that our value add is being heard clearly from an end perspective.
Yeah, and I remember that first conversation when he I told him where I worked, and he said, I was just there last week for a meeting.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you understand what I do, because most people didn't. So that was exciting, being in different areas, but within the same industry. So I remember early on just asking him questions about my role and am I making what I should be making? Things like that are interesting to me. But yes. But also, what's been great is having him as a reference for colleagues. I've just had many colleagues along the years who've been looking for roles or interested in companies, and Darren has the knowledge out there because he's constantly researching that. Of he knows what roles are out there. He knows what the culture is in companies. So when people come, like, "Oh, can your husband help? Like, tell me about this role, or does he have any roles available?" So I'm always able to refer him, and then he can serve as help for friends of mine too, which has been really great.
Oh, Gina, so you think that Darren taking you out on your first date the day after Valentine's Day, because he was very strategic about that, and then he had to back it up by making sure he knew a little bit about what you did. Darren, I see what you did there. I see what was going on immediately. Like, let me help you make more money. Let me help you figure out how this works. And I think that's great. But I love how you two work together and provide insight to one another. I think that's super helpful. I think, being able to work on opposite sides, or not even opposite sides, different aspects of the same industry, is such a unique thing. And being able to support each other professionally, I think, is really a cool thing to be able to work together in that. Not many people get that opportunity. And, I really want to maybe ask a little bit more around how you support each other a little bit. Are there unique ways that you like to encourage and challenge each other professionally? I know you're both very high performing, very successful at what you do. Has there been maybe a time where your understanding of each other's roles led to like a breakthrough or shifted maybe the way that you work? Darren, I know you mentioned a little bit about, how some of the things that Gina has brought to you has really shifted. I know that's been something great for us, even in business, and talking through having someone who pokes holes in our myopically great ideas and then quickly returns back to the drawing board. But, tell me a little bit about it. I mean, have you guys been able to find ways to encourage and challenge each other along the way professionally?
Yeah. You want
Yeah.
to go ahead and start?
Yeah, I was just thinking one way of challenging you professionally is he came to me years ago with this idea to launch a company. He had an incredible experience, had been doing it for years, and I was very supportive. Um, I just knew from what he'd accomplished in his career that it would be successful, no matter it would be hard, but he would be successful. So we did have a lot of conversations, brought in other people to seek wisdom. And at the time, it was something that he didn't feel comfortable doing because it is also a lot of pressure when you're supporting a family. So I understood that, but we got through that challenge, and here we are today. So yeah.
Yeah. That's certainly a milestone, something that I remember sharing with Gina, that this vision, this passion, this dream has started to become something that I couldn't deny. And so instead of really poking holes, it's like, well, how can we get there? How can we get there? And for our faithful listeners, I know that we've talked about that comfort and growth will never coexist.
Mm-hmm.
And that was certainly true in my life in terms of just being comfortable. And I was looking for growth, which led to really the birth of Thorough Group. But Sean, there's been times where it takes someone that's not directly in your professional world day to day, where I'm bringing something to Gina, a solution, an idea, perhaps an innovation, and she's able to say, well, have you thought about it from this perspective? And I touched upon it a little bit earlier. But as a end user, someone that we certainly place at her senior level and have as a client manager, it's given us a holistic approach. It's truly allowed us at Thorough Group to be consultative, be reliable, to be dependable in a lot of the things that, we've communicated. So, without really divulging what those solutions and innovations are, Jeena is a great secret weapon for us because of the years of experience, the relevant years of experience that she has, and clinical operations being a core competency of ours.
No, I agree. She is absolutely a secret weapon, and so glad to have her as a part of our team. I think it's a unique dynamic, but I think, Darren, I know I can speak for my family. I'm thankful that Gina didn't allow you to stay in comfort, didn't allow you to kind of stay where you were, and I think that's incredible. Well, as you also mentioned earlier in our conversation, how important family is for you, how important your children and your family, but also your community. So if I think about the two of you, you have someone who's a leader in clinical research and clinical operations and driving studies, and then somebody who's a leader when it comes to human capital solutions, and two drastically different, even educational pathways to get there. But how do you take the lessons you've learned in the workplace and model out leadership for your children? How is it have you guys been able to utilize that? I know you're raising two amazing children that, I'm thankful to be a part of their lives, and to watch their journey and watch really what they're working through and how they're growing. But, how have you been able to take some of the corporate lessons you've learned from leadership over the years to be able to implement that into your children and ultimately even the community around you?
Yeah. Um, I've had really the honor of, as I mentioned, working for some great organizations in my career. And within those organizations have been great leaders. And Sean, as I reflect back on those leaders, they've had a really good rhythm in their lives. They've been able to really be intentional about the time that they spend with their families, the time that they spend in their professions, and the time that they spend in their communities. So that's how I define a leader: being intentional, um, being able to really be disciplined and carving out that time. And this past year for our family specifically in 2024 was a year of building. We had really the honor and pleasure of launching Thorough Group and other businesses that we've been a part of. But I don't want my parents, or my kids rather, to come back to us and say, you missed again the time at school or the games. So for us, it's been being intentional about the time that we have. Again, showing what a healthy marriage looks like to our children. I think that's super important. I think that is certainly being a leader. We don't compromise on our time that we spend together as a married couple, and we let our kids know that. So they see how a healthy household perhaps looks like with two parents in the same household. So that's been paramount from us. Look, we hear the word a lot in corporate America, or even in the industry, being a servant leader. But I feel that that's very applicable for us. How we serve one another is leadership. So it's important that, we continue to serve each other, support each other, serve our kids, serve our community, which we're very passionate about, our faith community. And that the byproduct is leadership. Jeena, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think kids they don't listen to what we say, but they follow what we do. So like we're setting an example in everything we do. And one way, they do see us working a lot. If they're home from school or things, they do see the times where we have to work and we can't spend time with them. But we involve them in all the things we do. So there's times this past year I brought them to the office with me if they were home, and they absolutely love coming to the office, and they see all the things we do and all the things we have, and they're inspired then to, we had, tons of snacks and a pool table, and, I want to work at a place like this. And then even in launching our businesses, we brought one of them to the groundbreaking, and then we all went to the grand opening of our first store. So them just being there, experiencing those things with us, just puts a desire and passion in their heart to succeed as well in life and find their own dreams and passions to do, but they're seeing us, be with them and put our marriage first. We go on date nights. We have coffee breaks weekly. They can even tell, like, oh, you guys had a coffee break today. You're a little happier. They know we do overnight dates, and we also take a trip, just us, every year for a week. And we've done that for years, so they know we're leaving for a week or someone's going to watch them. So they see all of it and learn all of it. And then, of course, our faith community and serving the community is so important to us. They see that, witness us. They've started serving. We serve at the homeless shelter quite often and serve in our faith community. Our daughter is serving on the photography team. She's been doing that since she was 9. So just giving back to others is showing leadership, like Darren said, and they know that those are important values, core values for our family.
Yeah, that's so good. It's just in this discussion, just hearing the themes around rhythm, knowing your schedule, knowing when there's going to be times of high, when it's going to be a little bit more of a downtime, and how you can be intentional around every area of your life. What I love about, I know you have known the two of you for almost 10 years now and have seen really modeled out is this word of intentionality. Everything's done intentionally. Everything is almost a curated experience, if you will, because it's curated intentionally to know that I'm spending time with my kids here. I'm spending time here. I'm putting in some downtime to recharge here. We're going to travel here. Being able to manage all of that allows you to not only be really expansive in your success and effective in a lot of different spheres, but then you're also intentional of sharpening one another personally and professionally to see your careers and everything that you touch to continue to grow. It's really been inspirational. And, I really want to thank our audience for joining today. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you were able to take a couple of nuggets away around just that intentionality, around thinking through in this new year here in 2025. Where can you be more intentional in your world with a spouse or a child or a colleague or, some of those areas to really be able to multiply your efforts this year and see some great growth, see some great effectiveness, and most of all, to be thoroughly thriving in everything that you do. So we're thankful that you joined us again today. And we want to remember that, as we do every week, that we work as one and we win as one. Have a great week.
Thank you for joining us today for another great episode of Thoroughly Thriving. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to share it with those in your world. If you'd like to learn more about the Thorough Group, please go to thoroughgroup.com. And remember that we will all remain thoroughly thriving if we continue to work as one and win as one.